This regular meeting of the Marshall Independent School District Board of Trustees is hereby called to order. Let the record show that a quorum of members is present and that this meeting has been called in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. We wish to extend a warm welcome to everyone who is here. This is a regular meeting, and all items that will be discussed or voted on this evening have been posted as required by state law. As the MISD Board of Trustees, we are pleased that you have joined us as we celebrate achievements, set goals, listen to reports of the superintendent, approve budgets, contracts, personnel appointments, and make policy for the district. We are not here to make management decisions. That is the responsibility of the superintendent. This is a meeting in the public, not a meeting of the public. You are our guest, and you are welcome to observe and listen. If you wish to address the board in the public comment portion of the agenda, please fill out the public comment form found on the back table and return the completed form to our superintendent secretary. We are pleased that you have taken the time to join us this evening, and we thank you for your interest in the Marshall Independent School District. Someone like to open us in prayer this evening before we get started?
I will. Let us pray. Loving and gracious God, the giver of all good gifts, thank you for who you are and for what you have already done for us. Thank you for this opportunity to meet together. And Lord, we ask that you be with us in our deliberations and help us to be wise in the decisions we make for the good of all those you have placed their trust and confidence in our leadership. Dear Heavenly Father, I ask this evening that you will fill this Board of Trustees with the knowledge of your will, so that all we do will be done decently and in order. Grant us the humility to always seek you first in all that we do and say. In the name of Jesus, I offer this prayer. Thank God. Amen.
Amen. We'll now have our pledges, starting with the United States flag.
Yes, we do have ours. So representing Sam Houston STEM Academy tonight and leading us in our pledges, we will need these students to come forward when I call your name. Our pledges to the flag this month, these students are Matilda Rojas. Please come forward. And right there, please. You look beautiful, by the way. Carrington Cotton. Here's Carrington. Is Carrington here tonight? She didn't make it. Oh, goodness. Okay. Natalia Olvera.
All
Please come here. You look beautiful also. And Jonah Puerto. Come on up, Jonah. Wonderful. I love that Maverick shirt. All right, guys. Are y'all ready to lead us in the pledge? Okay. If you want to come walk up here. Rudy, can you kind of guide us? There we go.
All right, when y'all get ready, you start us, okay?
Join hands.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, now we'll do the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Appreciate y'all.
I have some certificates for y'all for your hard work and doing such a great job. Okay, let's see here. Matilda?
So sweet.
There you go. Hold that right there. We got Jonah. Here's yours. Natalia. There you go. All right, y'all stand there and hold your certificates. We're going to take a picture. We're going to put y'all on Facebook. Extra Mile Award.
Good job, guys. Good job.
Thank y'all.
Our district achievement is next. Dr. Langley has that.
Yes, these are my favorite things during our board meetings, are getting to see our students, of course, and then also getting to announce the teacher who received, or the staff member who received the Extra Mile Award for the month. For our Extra Mile presentation this month, we recognize an educator from Sam Houston STEM Academy for outstanding service to our students. I read to you the following nomination for Mrs. Jessica Johnson, the principal at Sam Houston. Mrs. Vida Ortiz Puerto is the heart of our campus. She currently serves, will you go ahead and come on up here, please? Come up here and share for your son. Go ahead and come up here.
Surprise.
She currently serves in the role of secretary, but has worked her way through Sam Houston, starting as a paraprofessional, then receptionist before coming the campus secretary. Ms. Vida is a warm face and a bubbly personality. She keeps everyone straight, ensuring that all needs are met. If you need anything at Sam Houston, just go to see Ms. Vida. And actually, I've been on the campus, and I've had 2 parents that I've heard say, they had a question, well, let's go ask Ms. Vida. I mean, they don't know, if they knew that that's who they needed to go see. In addition to fulfilling her role as secretary, she makes sure that everyone feels encouraged and loved. She takes time to decorate for every occasion, considers ways to make the students and staff feel joyful on campus, and much more. Ms. Vida definitely goes above and beyond for every student, parent, and staff member of Sam Houston. She is deserving of this acknowledgement and so much more. Thank you, Ms. Vida, for going the extra mile for our students at Sam Houston, and I want to present this to you. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you.
Congratulations, Ms. Vida.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to make one change to our agenda. Our auditor, Mr. Hallam, has another meeting he needs to get to, so we're going to move him up on the list to right now, right before we have our public hearing, so he can go over our audit quickly.
All right. Thank y'all very much. I appreciate the opportunity again to be back with you. I think we have a good report for you tonight, and Lee, there'll be a question and answer session after this, so if you're new to the board, I'm just going to let you know that. But I know this is a rather large report, has a lot of documents in it, has a lot of information. I know a lot of it might bore you to death, but I'm going to say that it's got some important things that we have to report to the TEA and to the federal government as well. So there is quite a few, as I said. The first important thing is over on page 3. Page 3 is your independent auditor's report, and you, the board, have hired our firm to issue this report, and in order to do that, we had to perform an audit, and we've done that. I'm pleased to report that this is an unmodified or clean opinion on your financial statements. It's the highest level of assurance that you can receive from a CPA firm. I won't take time to read all of this. This report is new. If you compare this to prior years, it is different in the way the format is laid out. They now appear, as I said, well, let's put that opinion at the top instead of at the bottom. So anyway, if you look at that first caption there is report on the audit of the financial statement, says opinions. I won't take time to read all of it, but I do want to read that second paragraph. In our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of the district as of August 31st, 2022, and the respective changes in financial position and where applicable cash flows thereof, and the respective budgetary comparison for the general fund for the year that ended in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. And as I said, that is what's referred to as an unmodified or clean opinion on your financial statements. With that, I'd like to just cover a few of the schedules of the financial exhibits. I would point out, starting on page 6, is your management discussion and analysis. A lot of information in here. It tells you where you're going, where you've been, and probably would put you to sleep if you can't sleep at night. So anyway, so I do want to look at the overall. If you look at pages 17 and 18, as you can see there, each fund here is representative of the major funds, as we call them. And I'm going to say y'all received quite a bit of ESSER funds this past year. Y'all know that. It's a large amount of money. I can show you in a moment. I'm going to point that out to you. Of course, I know y'all as a board and Michelle had trouble trying to figure out, and Susie, where to allocate that money, because you mainly could pick up salaries with it. And so it actually helped y'all out quite a bit. And it increased your fund balance about $6.5 million for the year. So I'll show you there, if you look at that first column on page 17, it shows the general fund total revenue, some $46,625,02. Your total expenditures was $39,828,629. So right at $6.8 million increase in fund balance. That's a big increase. That's probably one of the larger ones I've seen at MISD since I've been involved with it. So, and that just, and all of that is for the government money that you got from the COVID type money. So there was another prior period adjustment. I booked the available school funds that should have been booked from the prior year. So anyway, that increased your fund balance to some $23,841,684. Excellent fund balance. So the other funds there, you see the ESSER, that money was used, like I said, primarily to pay payroll. The debt service fund you collected through your property taxes and were able to satisfy your debt payments there. You had a little excess there of $311,000. So everything, like I said, you had an excellent financial year. Any questions on that schedule? I do want to just cover page 20. Page 20 is where y'all actually adopted your budget in August of last year and then amended it throughout the year. As you can see, you came out about $1.3 million better in budget on revenue side, and on the expenditure side, you can see there, again, you came under the expenditures by nearly $6 million over what you had budgeted. So you had actually originally budgeted to use up part of your fund balance. However, based on the way everything fell, you increased it, like I said a while ago, over $6 million. So that just shows you how you came out overall, which is, like I said again, very, very good year for the district. Any other questions there? I always like to cover the property taxes. If you look back on page 78 and 79, you think about all that revenue, well, over 20, it's actually right at $30 million of your revenue is from property taxes. That's a big, important part. Of course, the state takes that into account when they determine the amount of money they're going to allocate to the district. So, as you can see there, our current year levy was some $31,351,000, and we collected 96% of that current year levy. Overall, we collected 99% when you look at prior years. That's above state average. That's a very good collection rate for the district. So I commend everybody for that. The next page on page 80, that's this is actually your food service. I call it food service. They call it National Breakfast and Lunch Program. As you can see, our revenues were a little under what we had budgeted, but our expenditures were a lot under what we had budgeted if you look there. The only downside to that is we actually made money again in the food service, and that's primarily because we couldn't get the equipment. We had stuff on order, but due to COVID and everything else, we couldn't get things delivered. They were on order and back ordered. So we actually have an excess amount there under our food service program. We have sent the letter and applied to them, Susie and all. We're actually trying to spend that money up and not have to send it back to USDA because they're the ones that actually funds that money, and that money would go back to them. So anyway, we're trying to make sure we don't have to do that. So the next one has to do with the debt service, as I talked about earlier on page 81. As you can see there, the total revenues there, and this is all property tax revenue with $121,000 coming from the state. But you can see there, we collected that money, and we actually, like I said, had a little positive there with some $311,000. So we still have plenty of money in our debt service fund to pay our principal and interest on our bonds. So again, we had a good year there as well, and that's primarily because of that collection rate on that property tax. So, well, that pretty well concludes all the number part. On page 83, there is a letter back here. This is on internal control over financial reporting and compliance in accordance with government auditing standards. This report, there's nothing here, where there's two little instances I would point out. One had to do with that food service, and the other one has to do with our MOE, which is maintenance of effort. That's just two things that we had to report that we were really out of compliance on. Not anything material by any means, so don't let that bother you. So, and those are reported under the findings, but as I said, they're very immaterial from the standpoint of the TEA. I wouldn't be worried about it. So I talked about earlier the amount of federal money you got. If you look on page 93 and 94, you can see there in the middle of the page, on page 93, you can see that you got a little over $9.5 million in COVID money or ESSER funds. That's quite a bit of money that the district had to figure out, and that's primarily the reason for you to have a good year and a good fund balance increase. So anyway, but if you look on the next page, you can see that y'all received some $17,825,000 in federal money. That's, like I said, it's quite a bit when you look at it overall. So that pretty well concludes all the number part. The last thing in here is the letter to the communication with those charged with governance. Governance is you, this board, and there's nothing here answered in a negative way whatsoever. So I commend the board again for y'all, what y'all have done this past year on your budgeting, watching your expenses, and I want to thank Susie and her staff. They've done a great job, and I appreciate the help and everything, because she helps out quite a bit. She knows what she's doing, and she doesn't mind asking a question if she doesn't know about it. So that's the main thing. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to work for the district. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Once this is approved or disapproved, I've got a letter for y'all to sign, Brad, there, and I'll be glad to take that when you get a chance there to sign it. So.
Okay. You want to take that with you now? Do you want to? Go ahead.
You have to vote on it.
Let's go ahead and vote on it first. And then
And I move that we accept the presentation.
yeah, it's item 1 under finance. Consider and approve the financial report, independent auditor's report for 2021-2022. We have a motion.
I move that we
A second.
Motion by Ms. Marshall, second by Ms. Fisher. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries.
All right, this has got to go down to Ted.
Yeah.
Susie needs this one, Ted.
Brad signed it.
Yeah, Brad's already said that.
She does have a little bit.
What? It was over here.
I'll go ahead and sign that.
Leo.
Here, Mike.
Mike.
Thank you.
Thank y'all. Again, thank y'all very much.
Thank you very much. That's just for us.
I gotta go down to the state champion carcass, so anyway.
Well, you enjoy yourself.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it. Okay, moving along. Yes, and if you want to leave, if you've already been recognized, you're welcome to leave. You don't have to stay. All right, we're back to following our printed agenda. The next item is our public hearing on our financial integrity rating system of Texas, our first rating. All right?
Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah. Mr. Byrd has that.
Good evening. This is our school integrity report, and it is based on 2021 data. And this right here is it's a little bit of a history of the School First system and how it came about. But the red bullet there is the main thing that is affecting the 2021 data, and that is that indicators 5, 10, and 15 are not being scored due to the pandemic. So that we did not receive any score whatsoever on those. The objective of this is to make sure that we are sending as much of the money as possible, directing as much of it to instruction, and that we are held accountable, and that we are doing the very best management that we can of the district's finances. The scoring system is A, superior, B, above standard, C, meets standard, F, substandard achievement. And the ratings worksheet, it looks at 20 indicators, and they look at accountability, audit and governance, debt management, administrative costs, cash on hand, student enrollment, student to staff ratio, transparency, and revenue estimates. And our result for this year is exactly the same as it was last year. We have a superior rating. We scored 96 points out of the 100 possible points with a passing of 70. Now, we had 2 indicators where we lost points, and one was indicator 8, was the measure of current assets to current liabilities ratio for the school district sufficient to cover short-term debt. Our score there was 2.6258, which falls with 8 points there. So we did lose 2 points there. And indicator 11, this was the ratio of long-term liabilities to the total assets for the school district sufficient to support long-term solvency. Okay, our score there was 0.634 to a negative 0.0784, and that falls with 8 points. So we lost 2 points there as well. And the liabilities are more difficult to gain ground on those indicators. You know, we gained some ground on a couple of years ago, or last year, I think we gained 2 points, but we fell off, one indicator fell off that we did not have an issue with, but these are a little bit more difficult to get those ratios to where we will have that perfect score. Now there's some changes in the 2021 data in the way that TEA is looking at it. We have some critical indicators, and those indicators are 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, and 4. If any of these indicators, if you fail to pass one of these, it's an automatic F, substandard. So you absolutely cannot, no matter how well you do on the rest of it, you absolutely cannot fail one of these. We have ceiling indicators, and those are 4, 6, 16, 17, and 20. And again, this affects your max points. Like if your school district was issued a warrant hold, your maximum points would be 95 and your max rating would be an A. If your average change in fund balance is greater than 25%, and we have been spending some money out of fund balance, we don't want that to change more than 25% over 3 years, because it would hurt this.
Up or down? Up or down?
Or down.
If
Or just down?
if it goes down. And your max points then would be 89, and you'd automatically get a B. Your PEMS to your AFR, which is the audit flat file that I'll submit tomorrow, can only be a 3% difference between that and our PEMS data. If it is greater than 3% variance, it's an automatic 89 and it's a B. A material weakness, in which we did not have a material weakness in our audit, it would have been an automatic 79 with a C. And property values and taxes discussion, we have to do that, and we always do that. You know, I always have those slides in our first workshop, and I tell y'all, this is stuff we just have to go over. That's why. That is this indicator. Okay, we do have to disclose if the superintendent received any payments for consulting or other personal services in 2021, and there were none reported. And this is a listing of all the expenses that the board and the superintendents, and during that year we did have 3. We started out with Jerry Gibson, Lynn Hambrick, and then Dr. Langley. So we have a little bit of expense over there on all of it. We only spent a total of $8,000+ on all of it, and that is due to COVID. That's a little bit low. It's about $4,000 or $5,000 lower than what we normally would spend. Well, there were no gifts received by any of the board members or superintendents, and business transactions between the school district and board members, we did not have any of those either. We do have to put the superintendent's contract out online. It is available on our webpage, marshallisd.com. Anyone have any questions?
Good job, as usual.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, the next item is our public comment section. This is for items on our agenda or non-agenda items. Do we have any of those, Ms. Scott?
I have not received any.
Moving along to administrative reports. Item 1 is a proclamation for Board Appreciation Month. Ms. Scott is going to Proclamate.
I'm not proclamating, but as you know, January is Board Recognition Month, so we appreciate each of you and all the endless hours you give to our district. The governor usually issues a proclamation stating January being that month. I wanted to specifically thank the City Council PTO for providing the food for the reception tonight, specifically Melissa Haynes and Allison Lux. And then their smart sons have offered to read the proclamation to us. Will Jimerson and Reed Haynes. I have been asked to say Reed Haynes got braces yesterday, so he might have a little bit of a speech issue, but so just bear with him.
We got it.
We'll
No
be all right.
problem.
We'll be all right.
Y'all come on up.
We need that little stool.
I'm sure, okay.
Pin it down.
To catch a glimpse of the Texas of tomorrow, we need only look into the classrooms of today. For boys and girls presently enrolled in our schools will, in due time, take the reins of the nation and determine the destiny of our people. At their presence, our founders knew that the American democratic experiment could succeed only if our population remained virtuous and educated, and our schools promote the very enlightenment on which our republic depends. Consequently, the task that befalls our school boards is of the utmost importance. Recognizing that our educational system is foundational to our social order, individual schools and districts are answerable to the people through elected school boards. These boards set a vision for their district based on students' needs and community values. They uphold standards of rigor, achievement, discipline, and decency, and they provide a forum which concerned parents and citizens can involve themselves in the educational process and make their voices heard on pressing issues. Ultimately, meaningful progress can be initiated at the grassroots level, and to this end, school boards ensure that the concerns of parents and citizens alike are addressed.
Amen.
A child's God-given capacity is practically unlimited, and to unlock the fullness of its potential, we must all support the efforts of local school boards in any way we can. We must likewise remain informed about issues facing our school district, never forgetting that these bodies are accountable to the citizenry.
Yeah.
At this time, I encourage all Texans to acknowledge and celebrate the thousands of school board trustees who voluntarily serve the next generation of leaders. From the Panhandle to the Gulf of Mexico, our school board members, I forgot how you say it. Advocate on behalf of our children, strive to provide them best possible education, and ensure that their needs and those of the parents remain a central focus. In so doing, they pave the way for a better, brighter future for the Lone Star State.
Good job, guys.
And in case you didn't know that they are fourth grade students at Sam Houston.
All right, yes. Good job, good job. Yeah, y'all did great. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank y'all for that. Thanks for the reception. We appreciate it very much.
Very much.
And all the gifts that we have back here.
From the campuses.
All the schools, thank
From the
you.
campuses, and it looks like y'all had Christmas back there.
All right, moving along to item 2, we're going to hear a report from our Long Range Facilities Committee that's been meeting the last several months, and they have elected Ms. Randy Abraham to present to us.
Hello.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. I have a little presentation. Then we went on to our second meeting. We met with the architects. We did an analysis of the solutions needed, the repairs, renovations, and then we did a second priority ranking after looking at all of that, of the facility needs. A group of us toured Hallsville and Longview, and then our last meeting, we met with the financial analyst and discussed some of the finances, and then we made a final recommendation, which we're presenting here today. Based on the two rankings that we did, this is how we ranked the facility needs in order. So we had all this list, and then we would, after each meeting, take this list and then rank it from 1 to 9. So, and I don't like to use the word CTE. I think we've got to start using career, technology, and education, because a lot of people don't know what CTE is. So I'm trying to be better about that. But so CTE building was our first priority. Core classrooms, the current CTE classrooms, then the commons and lunch area, and I think that encompasses like commons all over the school, top and bottom. New student furniture, the exterior of the building, the library, the new dance and cheer facility, and then the band hall. So after our first meeting, we also received some associated renovation costs. And so I've kind of just grouped them. The lower area is everything on the second floor. If y'all want to know more of those details, I can break them out. And then the upper area is everything, upper area is everything on the top floor. Lower area is everything on the bottom floor. The new CTE building, and we were presented square footage of 14,750 with those proposed costs. And then the new dance and cheer facility, and we were presented that square footage and that cost, and then the exterior. So after we had looked at all of this after our first meeting and done our tours, we kind of presented some items that we would like to see some costs of. So these are additions that we requested. And just to give some examples, we were walking around, we understand there's new flooring in the science labs, but unfortunately it appears that there's black gunk oozing out from the floors. So to us that didn't know they were new, we look at them and say, ooh, these floors need to be replaced too. And then I think the consensus from everybody, from a lot of the comments that we heard on the committee was, if we're gonna do this, we need to do it right. So if we're gonna spend money, let's spend what we need to do it right. We don't want it to look like it's piecemealed, like we've got, some flooring here and some flooring here. It needs to look consistent. I think everyone is of the opinion that we have a great school. Everybody loves our school. We don't want to build a new high school. It's been timeless since the 80s. I really like the architecture of it. I hope that whatever we do to it, we maintain that timeless, structure, and not do anything too cutesy that's only going to last for, and be out of date. But so those were some of the things that then we're going to have all these, once you remove all those lockers, there's just dead space everywhere. So we asked for some costs of having like some little think tanks or, just different little seating type areas that maybe the kids can utilize. Then our big costs here. So for example, when we saw about the gym, we all appreciate that the cheerleaders and dance team need a facility. However, we had some concerns that our district just is not in a position to build a gym that can just focus so specialized on cheer and dance. And if we're gonna build a gym, let's build a gym that is going to be an auxiliary type gym, and it can be a regulation gym, and we can utilize it, like if volleyball is having a tournament and they need extra space, let's utilize this gym, and it can even bring in some revenue by having tournaments. So we asked what the addition for that would be, and we're already looking at 7,000 square feet for the cheer gym, and an auxiliary gym would just be another 3,500 square foot. So we were like, we're spending 2.5, let's spend the additional 1 and make it a facility that can be utilized by more activities. The CTE building, we went and toured Hallsville and Longview. Personally for me, and I think a lot of other people on our committee, the CTE building is one of the most important things that I think we are going to do here. I think for our community it's very important. I know from the City of Marshall perspective, that is, we're trying to bring in new businesses and new industries, but we lack the workforce. And unfortunately, there are kids that don't have a desire to go to college or can't go to college, and so these certifications are going to be very, very important to them as well as our community as a whole. I think this building needs a lot of, when we went and toured Hallsville, What a lot of us really liked was the classrooms were in the building with the lab. So if you're in an automotive classroom, it's directly across from the automotive lab. So we thought, after looking at and after talking to them about their space, it became apparent that the 14,000 square foot that we were building, we're gonna outgrow. I mean, it's probably gonna fit automotive and construction and maybe welding, but if we wanna expand our program and like add paramedic or EMT or something like that, we're kind of limited. So if we're gonna go spend, let's build something. Whether we finish it out or not yet, let's have it ready to be able to finish out whenever we expand our program. So that was our thought there. And then, so we went back and asked for additional costs. Now, I do wanna say these additional costs, I'm not 100% sure if this includes everything, like for the gym and the CT building, if that'll be everything that it needs, like for example, basketball goals or everything to finish it out. These are maybe just more construction costs, and I think on top of all these costs, there's additional fees. In the CT building, I don't know, I think more needs to be thought about whether it's going to be certified. I think that's very important for TSTC professors to be able to come teach there. I don't know all the ins and outs of what is required, or if that is included in these. Those are questions y'all would want to ask further. So when we added our additions, and I err on the side of caution, so I look at the top number, we're at 33.6 million. Now again, I don't know that this includes all the fees. I think originally the 29 didn't, so we were looking at 35 already with the 29 million, so we're already past our 35 here. And this is just recommendations that we have. So then we go look at the current tax, our current tax rate. So right now our INS is what we would have to use to do this, is at 0.2899. And that's just kind of how we compare to other districts. Because I think the goal going into this was to try not to have to increase any taxes, which we all love to try not to do. And just to give y'all a little background, and I am not your tax expert or your financial consultant, but I will tell you that this is what you're going to see in the next slides. These were the assumptions that were made. We're assuming 4.5%. Again, y'all were able to save money last time when the interest rates went down and refinance. So, but right now that's kind of where it's at. And we're looking at a taxable value of $2.8 billion based on the 2022-2023 property tax assessments. So if you look at this amount, based on the tax assessments of 2.8, which again, we don't really know what we're going to do if the property values were overinflated and they're going to come down at all. But as of that right now, we could spend $35 million and not increase our INS tax rate. If our tax values were to go down to 2.6, we would have to increase our tax rate just to spend $35 million. So again, we all started out, and I think the majority of the committee was, we really don't want to have to increase taxes. But then I think as we got going into this, we do think this is very important. I mean, the students are still sitting in the same desks I sat in. And I mean, the furniture in the library is the furniture that was there from the 80s. I mean, we do owe our students, a better environment that they have to go into every day. I mean, they do need some upgrades, no doubt. But as of 2019, they have amended the education code, and so therefore any bond that is presented, whether you're increasing taxes or not, on the ballot when the voters go to vote, right below the bond in big, bold, italic, like I've written it there, capitalized letters, it is going to say this is a property tax increase. So even if we are not increasing taxes, they are going to sit there and see the statement that says this is a property tax increase. So after a lot of us committee members realized we're already now facing this hurdle, right? Because we're going to be out in the public saying, look, we're not increasing your taxes. A lot of people will understand that. A lot of people are going to show up and say, they fed us a bill of goods. This right here says they are increasing our taxes. So that started to make us think, okay, let's look at our taxes and let's kind of get an idea, because if we're going to do this, let's do it right. Let's spend what we need to spend and make it right. Let's not half do it. So we started looking at what would 1 cent in the tax rate do. And this is actually looking at property values, just to give you an idea. So if you own a $100,000 home, the annual increase of 1 cent in the tax rate would be $4 a year, 33 cents a month. And I will tell you, and we have it all the way up to 500,000. When I'm looking at tax rates, my bigger concern is the lower end, the 100,000 and below. I mean, while I appreciate everyone that has, you know, other properties, I worry more about the people that need that extra dollar. So I tried to put in a little bit of perspective on, so even at the highest rate of $500,000 property value, the monthly increase would be $3 a month. It would be $36 total a year, an increase in tax for us to get one additional cent. I mean, we know nowadays the cost of everything goes up. So we're talking about, you know, a gallon of regular gas is $2.95, a gallon of milk is $3.19, carton of eggs is $4.69, and we can't go to Whataburger for less than $8.43. So to me, when you put it in that perspective, that 33 cents a month doesn't seem so steep. Okay, so what does 1 cent give us? 1 cent puts us in between 40 and 45 million. So probably around 42. I don't have the exact numbers, but that would be where 1 cent increase in tax would give us to be able to spend. So based on this information, the committee's recommendation is we don't have a set number, but we are recommending that you spend up to 45 million. The sweet spot probably being around the 42 1 cent tax increase. And I had this presentation. If anybody would like copies, I brought copies. And also while I'm here, I would like to recognize, if everybody would stand up that was on the committee that's present tonight. And if anybody has any questions.
Anybody have any questions specific? We're gonna talk more about this a little bit with the architects and
Yes.
plan, et cetera, but anything specific for Ms. Abraham or the committee, how they may have arrived? Thought you did a great job presenting it and all that.
Yes, you did.
Makes total sense.
Thanks.
Helps us for sure, make some decisions.
Thank you.
Thank you all for serving, we appreciate it very much. Okay, we've already done the audit report. Item 4, superintendent's report. Dr. Laney doesn't have anything tonight, so we're going to skip over that and go to our consent agenda action items. Those are all our normal items there. And we will take a motion on that.
Second.
Have a motion by Mr. Huffine, second by Ms. Marshall. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Item 1, we've already done. Matters requiring board discussion and action. Item 1, we did earlier with the audit. Item 2 is consider and approve the budget amendments. Ms. Byrd.
We have several items that are just moving funds in between function codes, but we are in Fund 240, Child Nutrition. We are asking for an additional $31,610.25 to put new computers at every cafeteria. And that will increase our deficit to $409,632, and hopefully everything will come in.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we can use up some of that,
In the money.
to spend that much.
use up some of that fund balance that we can use up.
Make a
On
motion,
something that we need.
Yeah.
Yes.
make a motion, we approve the budget amendment as presented.
Second.
Have a motion by Mr. Palmer and a second by Ms. Fisher. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Item 3 is consider and approve the participation in the Texas Smart Buy membership program.
This is an annual membership that we do every year it costs $100, and it allows for us to have more vendors to choose from without having to go out for an RFP.
Make a motion, we approve the Texas Smart Buy membership program.
Second. I have a motion by Mr. Palmer and a second by Mr. Lewis. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Item 4 is consider and approve a resolution accepting donation of real property.
Yes, Ken Oden has offered to donate on behalf of the Oden family .331 acres of land next to the MISD Transportation Department. The value of the property is $2,900. And the resolution also asks that Dr. Langley be allowed to act on behalf of the district to finalize the closing of the land transfer.
Move that we accept.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Marshall and a second by Mr. Huffines. We accept the donation of real property. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Thanks to the Oden family. We appreciate it.
Yes.
All right, the next item is board discussion, consideration considering the budget and bond program. You have a bond folder in front of you that we put together that has pretty much everything that you'll need. And we have our architects here and Robert Wilbanks, I saw him sneak in somewhere.
Art Wilbanks is here.
Oh, there he is, yeah.
He's with land.
He's with land. I want you to help manage the project.
And then we have our GLS architects here, and Courtney and Larry. And then we've got Brian Grubbs with Samco right back there. So they are here to answer questions.
Any questions that we've got? Maybe first off, if there's any, if you want to say something first, anybody, GLS, Brian or Robert, as far as being going through the process and anything that might have changed since you talked to us last, or anything that you want to start off with, you're welcome to do that. If not, then we'll ask you whatever questions we have. Feel free to.
She did a really good job.
Okay, good. Good job.
Who wants to go first?
We know you have questions. Why don't we start with you, Mr. Barr?
Let's start with Mr. Grubbs. So,
Put him on the spot.
so looking at the numbers, one thing that I've heard a lot about as of late that has me a little nervous is and I'm going to call this the wrong thing, it's the state guarantee. And I know that's topped out. And I know I've heard that's affecting the issuance of bonds. I think Plano ISD had a hard time issuing some bonds the last several weeks because their rating, and this may be wrong, so correct me if I get off because you'll know and I won't. But because that's topped out, it's affecting bond rating, is that correct? Which then makes it difficult to issue the bonds?
Well, it's the permanent school fund. And when you've sold bonds historically, you've made an application to the TEA to get this permanent school fund. Getting this permanent school fund on your bonds you sold to date gives you the AAA bond rating. It's the highest credit quality rating. Okay? Well, the fund is comprised of a number of assets. And the way the IRS calculates the amount of bonds the permanent school fund can guarantee is based on the number of assets in that particular fund. So the amount of bonds that are guaranteed as a function of the number of assets under management has reached its calculated capacity figure. So now moving forward, as districts pay back principal every February and August, when you make your bond payments, that increases some capacity. We're also hopeful that the IRS changes the calculation. There's been 2 other periods of time where the PSF program was temporarily frozen. The last time it was frozen, they adjusted the calculation and increased the capacity. Right now, it is frozen. So the districts that had November elections, they made application and the TEA filled those up as much as they could based on property wealth to get it up to where its capacity is today. We have districts that had November elections that have actually already been in the market without the AAA rating, the PSF guarantee, and they do so because there's 2 options. There's One, you go into the market with just your underlying credit ratings, which in your case are very strong. You're already in the AA category by yourself, regardless of PSF. Districts that have A ratings can request private bond insurance, and a lot of those insurance companies are stepping in, like the Permanent School Fund, to back those bonds, to elevate them into the AA category. We actually had a district a week ago that sold bonds with private bond insurance that locked in on a 30-year fixed rate deal, a little over 4%. So in terms of, is the PSF at capacity, the answer is yes. Does it give me any issues to say that Marshall couldn't sell their bonds when it's time to sell them? The answer is no. You have strong underlying credit ratings. Yes, it would be nice if we had the PSF. The difference between a AAA rated bond and a AA rated bond is approximately 15 basis points, 0.15%. So that district that sold a little over 4% last week, if they had the PSF, probably would have been closer to 385. In the scenarios that we've run with an assumption of 4.5%. And it wasn't driven by the PSF, it's driven by, we're having to consider calling for an election in the months of January and February for an election that's going to happen in May for bonds that are not going to be sold with a locked-in interest rate until June, July, or August. So,
How much is the insurance, and can you pay it out of the bond proceeds?
the insurance, it's typically a function of the size, but it's a very modest expense, and it is paid for out of the bond proceeds, just like you would pay the fee for the permanent school fund guarantee.
Okay.
What about the numbers that Ms. Abraham went over, and I know we've got a lot of that with us. Are we feel good with those numbers, number one, and number two, what's not included in that as far as the soft costs, and is there equipment in there for the CTE building, and basically we're missing anything? Is there anything extra that needs to be in there?
The soft costs are in there based on the architect's fees and the furniture and FF&E type equipment. One thing that wasn't considered in the earlier going was having a program manager, so LAN cost was not in those original numbers that we gave them. Now, they may be in the final numbers you're looking at now, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it is.
What about the figures? What about the
It is, yeah.
What page is that?
The additional items that she was saying that where we increased the square footages and things like that, I don't think it was in that overall, it had the 12%. That was the only thing that didn't include the 12%, which was that added amount of.
I added the 12%.
You did? Okay, then you're good. Okay, good job.
So, I think what he's asking is, the CTE facility as built, does it include lifts for automotive? Does it include?
Hoods or welding.
Yeah, welding hoods, does it include, and how many? And, I mean, how'd you arrive at that percentage?
12% is the number that we had used historically in other projects. It's not designed yet, so I couldn't tell you how many,
Hood.
yeah, I couldn't tell you exactly how many that's in there, but sometimes we've done 10%. We bumped it up a little bit so that account for a CT facility has more of that type of equipment in it, so.
Gotcha.
We also received today the page that looks like this. That says
It's behind,
2023 bond planning.
behind the tab renderings.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, it's on the land tab. It's on
Land
tab.
tab. And you'll see on there the proposed budget's land and then proposed budget GLS, and then you can see the difference of those. And I feel pretty positive the cost will probably end up costing just somewhere in between those.
Yeah, I think the land budgets were in that 40 to 45,
Right, yes, they are.
which had additional soft cost and contingency.
So do y'all include any costs for escalation in your numbers?
We included 10% in our original numbers.
So where is that in the soft cost?
Now, the soft cost was 12%.
Yeah, and then
Soft cost is architect's.
they added the
fees,
10% in
surveys.
the line item.
And the construction costs had the escalation.
So it had 10% by itself and then 12% soft cost on top of that.
On top of that.
Okay.
But those numbers, the soft cost and the contingency was increased in the numbers that you see from LA. it just gives you more cushion there for
Right.
possible increases.
What do we, Mr. Wilbanks, on the, there's a pretty good difference between the land budget and the GLS budget. Can you tell us what the difference is, or?
Sure, so we took the pages that I think you all have, and that's really all we had. We cited in the last 3 meetings, and there are the discussions. And the last meeting is when this other information came up, so I got that information yesterday, and I've incorporated that for a larger gym, and that's incorporated in our numbers. On the top sheet, Dr. Langley pointed out, I found what it is, it pulled the wrong number.
Okay,
It's actually
good,
correct.
good.
On my detail, it pulled the wrong number in there. You're right, it's like $1 million difference, which is, yeah. And then on the soft cost issue, the $1 million difference was that we looked at what they had, and we just don't believe historically what we've seen that you could do everything you've got to do for 12%. So I don't know what fees, architectural fees, y'all have discussed, so I don't know what the reason. So we use what we would normally see, which is about 6.5%. So the 6.5%, then only use 5.5% to buy everything else, everything. So that's why I'm saying, so we don't typically do that. And I just completed this morning, so I didn't go across and get the total we have, but we usually target somewhere around 20 to 25%. And the reason is because what a lot of times doesn't get accounted for is all the little expenses you have to pay no matter what. So you've got consultants here tonight. They're going to be dealing with this as you go through. Your legal fees, you're going to end up having some legal fees or so. So in my project detail, I've added the line item. So if you were to look at that, it's cumulative. So you couldn't, none of those projects would stand alone on those numbers because they're too low.
Yeah.
But those are all in there. And I'm sure that a lot of the numbers I have that GLS has got that figured in the way they feel it figures in. We just have a difference of opinion on that. And everybody's got an opinion. So it's not that they're wrong and we're right, or we're wrong and they're right.
Right.
It's just we're looking at it from 2 different perspectives. And but there's a lot of different things in there. There's a lot of things that I don't know. I don't know whether you guys have accounted for instance, computer replacement in some of the admin areas. So I've got a number in there that says, but it says, unless it's newer than 3 years. It's newer than 3 years, then you can wipe that number off. In other words, this still has to be gone through and vetted. But I didn't want to come here and not having considered all that. We want to be thorough if we can, put that out there so that you know kind of where that lands. So we also didn't completely agree with their construction costs and everything, the way they were doing it based on the square footage. So in most of the projects, we've actually increased the cost for construction as well. And then the other line item that I do have in our cost is for a sprinkler system, and that's based on when I was here before. There was a lot of discussion about it, so it's really more a matter of just verifying that. If it's verified, the fire marshal said, because the fire marshal is the one that's going to have the final say on it. And he was pretty unequivocal when we did the last renovation that if you do another major work, this building has got to be sprinkled. So if you do that, then each of these projects has got to have dollars added in for that. And I used a square foot cost of $5 a foot, which is kind of in the middle range. A lot could depend on where we have to bring water from. I mean, there's so many variables there. There's no way of really absolutely nailing that down until there's more. I mean, they've got a lot of work to do to get that detail. I mean, there's no way us or them. We're not going to guess at that because that's what it is. So we're trying to hit the second ring on the target. And get as close to that as we can. And then we can, that's what makes it attainable to get over.
Do you recall, because I do not, and Huck, with our last bond, what the soft costs were with that?
You know, I figured you were going to ask me that. But I will get that and I'll send it to you tomorrow. I just don't recall.
That turned out to obviously be fairly accurate. I mean,
Yeah.
No, mostly inflated.
And we use those numbers. They're pretty consistent. Where it varies usually is where we had some variation here because East Texas pricing is a little bit different here with regard to geotechnical and surveying. It was a lot cheaper here than what we would see in Houston because it's a more competitive market and everything, I guess. But there's a lot of costs in there. So all the new buildings, For instance, we're carrying money for commissioning and test and balance because that can't be done by the contractor. A lot of people put that in there, but that has to be, they were thinking through it was going to be, what I've seen it done is just paint it, repaint it. And it looks good, but it's not a long-term solution. And since you're not a district where you're going to do a bond every 5 years, probably, you need the long-term solution. And I think the lady that spoke initially said, if we're going to spend it, let's be smart about it and do it right. So in my opinion, most of those areas, and that's what I try to price, that should be considered new ceiling. And it will just make it a better job. Again, the other issue is when you rake working with the ceiling. You've got workers going in there and lifting tiles. They never clean their hands. So the tiles are fine, they have fingerprints on them. So it's little things like that. It's not big stuff, but those things do make a difference in the project at the end. And then there was a comment that was made at the meeting that I was in, that there was a great desire, I think that's where the lady was going to, I apologize, initially about the flooring. So the comment that was made was, well, what do you want? Well, we want to be able to walk anywhere in the school and we make sure we think we're in the same building. So what that means is you accept all the finishes that you just did, or you start over, because that's the only way you can do it. You can do a complementary color selection of materials, but it's really not going to be the same. So one of the things, the recommendation that I did see that was very good, and I completely agree with it, was the repair of terrazzo. And that's hands down the best way to go with that. It's most economical. You've got a lot of good talent out here because we use it on a bunch of schools. And they can go in and knock those out, fill them in, and the new guy knows what he's doing. You won't be able to see most of it. They'll completely cover it up. So, I mean, there's a lot of good stuff in it. It's just we just didn't agree on the pricing.
Okay. On the sprinkler system, have we gotten far enough? You gotten far enough to talk to anybody at the city about that?
Yeah, we've talked to our code consultant, and under the renovation code of IBC, you can do renovations like finishes, flooring, walls, and things of that nature. It's when you start tearing out walls, moving walls, building new walls, then whatever you build has to be up to the current code.
That'd be all the new.
The fire sprinkler deal, and I agree with this comment, when we started out looking at this project, there was kind of, our marching instructions were to be, look at this as a little bit more on the economical side and trying to stay under $20 million. So we're not there anymore. We're going beyond that. I believe if you're going to spend the kind of money you're looking at on the high school, that it would be wise to put a sprinkler system in the high school. Now, it will open up a lot of other options where you can do some different things with some of your walls, like where you have solid walls, you could put glass walls in and things like that. So it will actually free up the design of the building and be able to do some nicer details in the building if you go ahead and bite that bullet and put the sprinkler system in. But it is 300,000 square feet at about $5 a square foot. I would agree with that.
So based on that answer and your previous answer, would y'all say we have a limited scope? I mean, we have kind of these large parameters of projects, but we don't really have. Would we be better to bid a project if you went and designed it completely and said it looks like this, and then you go design those
our goal
elements?
in the planning that we gave you as far as the budgeting was that when you walked in the building, it looked like you refreshed the whole building, that it all is consistent, the floorings are out now. There was that one area that has some fairly new flooring that at first we didn't have that in there, but that was one of the add items to replace that, so that when you walk in that area, it's the same flooring throughout. And there was some discussion about covering up the terrazzo and putting LVT or some other material on, which could be done, but terrazzo is a high quality life of the building material. So it kind of gave us a lot of heartburn to think we're going to cover up that real quality material with less quality material. So totally agree with the comments about repairing the terrazzo, or even in some of those student commons areas, maybe the design incorporates some flooring changes, some different flooring in different areas just as a design to make it a nice, interesting, comfortable space. So, I don't know if that answers your question.
Mr. Chilcote, can you speak to the new tile and grid in the lower commons? Hasn't that recently been all upgraded?
It was not complete, the grid was not complete.
Okay, just the tiles were changed. Okay.
And when, yeah, I was gonna say, when we were walking through the facility, there was a lot that, y'all had already invested money in.
Right.
And so when because we were trying to keep it under, there were some items that were not included because y'all had already invested money in it.
Right.
So,
The kicker with the sprinkler system is you're gonna have to take a lot of grid down anyway. And so typically, some of it's gonna get damaged. Doesn't mean it all has to be replaced. But I didn't really know how to interpret exactly what repair meant, so that's why I said what I said, because it was got a different definition.
Hard to know.
But it just depends on how much, and how far you go. But if you have to put a new sprinkler system in, you're gonna mess that grid up. I mean, there's gonna be a lot of work, and inevitably, when you take that down, now all your smoke detectors are coming down, all your enunciators that are in the ceiling. Every ceiling device that's in there is gonna get moved and touched. So there's added cost to all that. And that's just a function of it. And inevitably, when they put it back, it won't work. So you'll be tracing it, is it the cable, was it the contractor, was it just really old cable? So, under the pricing I was doing, I was trying to add some dollars for cable. Even though typically I would want to see that in the construction, the cabling piece. But because I wasn't sure to the extent that GLS had it in there, I made sure that covered. So again, there's a lot that has to be vetted. We haven't had a chance to sit down and go through and compare notes. That I think will clear it up. But I think I'm at 40, round numbers, 44 million right now. So, I think we're all in the same place.
Robert, same question for you. You're kind of we're guessing because it's a renovation and we don't have plans per se, we have ideas. Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement.
Would it, if we had specific plans, could we nail costs more closely?
So, yes, and kind of no.
Okay.
So, yes, it's always better to have more information, right? The more information you have, the better off you know pricing. The question of how far you go with the drawings, that's the real question. What I'm seeing, and y'all are not unique. I just went through a huge bond exercise and we didn't have a lot of drawings. And we did a lot of stuff square foot. A lot of ours was new construction, which makes it a lot easier. Renovations are tough to do square footage. So I think it would be greatly beneficial, if you're gonna nail those numbers down, to allow the architect to really do a little more work. You don't have to get into CDs, but you certainly can get through SD and maybe into DD. I'd actually like to go all the way to into DD because there's enough information there that then at that point, there's a clear scope. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. Timing-wise doesn't work. I think you're going to have to spend some intense days. And then obviously you've got a short period of time here to make a decision to allow for them to literally go through. You say, what about this? What about this? What about this? From the time you started to now, a lot of details changed. And inevitably there's something that's probably going to be miscommunicated or missed. And it could be minor, it could be a bigger uh-oh. That's why a lot of the budgets have kind of soft points in them, because you're trying to keep that flexibility. Our goal is always to get to the bottom line regardless of the breakdown, so you've got enough money that even if this money goes around, you're okay. That's at the end of the day. But you do not have to have the full set to do it. But the more scope you have, and I don't feel like there's a real good grasp on the scope right now, but I haven't got full visibility of what everybody else is saying.
You guys,
a lot of words, but.
And nobody's taken, I don't think, because all this is fairly new information, but nobody's kind of taken into account in the CTE portion, SACS accreditation and what we would have to do to, y'all haven't had a chance to
No,
look at
because
that.
that just came up last week.
Right, that's what I'm saying. That's a new revelation that no one's really thought about yet.
And what's required, if it's built, what's required to do that. So that could actually
More money.
Areas they could have requirements for administrative positions and things like that that could end up adding square footage to what's already inside. CTE programs are very expensive. We just did one that's not as big as you're talking about. It was a renovation. Our budget was $750,000 just for the equipment. And we didn't have lifts and welders and things like that. So CTE is a very wide open, and just depends on how far you want to go and what you're going to do.
Yeah, if you're doing the culinary arts, for instance, the kitchen equipment alone can be that $750,000.
Without Lincoln, right. So that's why when I say scope, that's what I mean. I just think that, and it's something that probably could be done in a very short period of time, but there needs to be that kind of intense meeting with the people that be available and sit down and go through that and kind of round that out, and then everybody can confirm the numbers. Because it could actually go down a lot. I don't think it would go down a lot, but it could also go up. And the worst thing that we ever want to do, and I'm sure Joe is in the same level, is tell you it's going to cost $10 and it's $15. And that puts you in a horrible position. And we don't ever want to do that.
As far as the location of the CTE building, I know initially when we talked back behind the school, and now heard this conversation about moving it to the front, up here on the east side, what we call the ninth grade wing. That seems to make more sense and probably would be cheaper, I would think.
More economical. Thinking about the exterior, kind of updating the exterior of the high school, that part in front there would be new construction in front of existing, so you don't have to overhaul the front of that existing building. You're basically putting a new building in front of it. So that could be designed so it all ties into the new facade and exterior of the high school.
On that note, when you're talking about the CT, will there be more security and safety improvements with that? Or how many students do you think our building would hold, and will that cause any overcrowding of students?
I think it actually would be easier to make it secure over on in that other location, because it can be connected with the main school and won't be separated by a parking lot like the other driveway, like the other buildings.
And as far as the crowding, it's a one-for-one. It's just another classroom in your student population.
Okay.
Should we open it up?
The outside students, and they would be, you'd have that area, I presume, set off, parking dedicated for that.
And I want to make sure that everybody understands that the committee started meeting in November, but GLS has been here meeting with us since June of last year. So this isn't something that we just all of a sudden, we're like, oh, let's just go. So we've been working a lot. Of course, things have come up after we had the committee meeting, adding, different things and asking different questions. So that's where the changes started coming in. So I just wanted to make sure everybody understood GLS's part has been in here since, well over half a year now. So.
I apologize if I implied you guys know what I meant. I meant that we haven't had the time.
Right.
But I do think that, probably some, more meetings with regard to internal staff to define actually what those CT programs are, so that can be better handled. As far as security goes, though, and everything that I have, I've got additional, I've tried to account for potentially having replaced cameras, cabling, et cetera, for those. Same thing with the new buildings, cameras. Now, whether it's what you end up with or what y'all want, at the end of the day, it can be different, but there are numbers in there for that.
How'd you come up with these numbers in your?
So what we had is the breakdown that you guys have that has a square footage and lists of general descriptions of what the work was. So we tried to back in and interpolate in what does that mean. So where they say, and I just stay on ceiling and grid because that's an easy one to find that. So where it says ceiling and grid, right, or new ceiling, I think it says new ceiling tile and repair grid, okay? So if you're going to take the tile out, you're going to touch the smoke detectors, you're going to touch the lights, you're going to touch those. There's costs associated with it. It's not just the ceiling. So we looked at their square footage and we looked at the total amount. I took the 12% out and I got their construction number. Now I've got a square foot cost. And based on that, went back and looked at all the categories that they have, went backwards and then re-injected it for what we believe is more, was a safer number.
Okay.
What about as far as the construction? Would that be done in sections inside the building? as far as, having students in the building and stuff like that.
Yeah, it would certainly have to be phased, and kind of thinking about a timeline, if you were to call a bond for May and then, get the bond sold in early summer, you're probably looking at the project bidding out January probably of '24, and then construction starting somewhere in March of '24. So you're going to have the first summer and then the second summer before everything's completed. So you're going to have 2 summers in there. So we have 2 summers where we can pretty much access everything. We had discussed with our construction sources, Bearing Clay, by the way, has been helpful in helping us with some of these construction budget numbers, about trying to work on that core area of the classrooms, because it's hard to access those areas without disturbing a bunch of other areas. So in those summer sessions, when we have more time, focus on those core areas, knock those out, and then do those other hallways that have outside access points in phases. So, if we could have 10 to 12 classes at a time to be able to work on an area, finish it, and then be able to occupy those spaces and then come back. Obviously, if we're going to do a sprinkler system, that needs to happen in a summer period, because you're talking, being all in the ceilings above the entire school. One thing that's a little different and explains some of the difference in cost figures here is when we started out, we were looking more at finishes. What you see, the ceilings, the floors, the walls, updating the finishes so that when you walk in the building, you're looking at new stuff. They're going beyond that with some of these budget numbers. Obviously, with the fire sprinkler system, there was no discussion about getting into the camera system or any of your other systems like that. So we weren't looking for things to add. We were trying to figure out how far can we go with this, and kind of with an austere budget. But now the budget's increased some. So it opens up the options to go beyond where we were looking.
In other districts I've worked in, I'm assuming, because these multiple districts have done this, that there's nothing wrong with this, but I carried money for internal external moves, so a lot of stuff has to be done. And the way that these other districts in the past have done this is they document the hours their employees have to work on it, and then they reimburse themselves from those funds. Some of the check on that, I've done it, but I would never put myself out there. I'm not a lawyer. But that might be also another way that either your employees, and they have to do it either way, or you have to pay an outside company. If you're going to pay the contractor to do it, you pay an outside company to do it, or if you can reimburse yourself for it to do it, that would be more effective, which is why everybody got it, not other people done it. So, that's just another potential option as far as the phasing, and it's my opinion, my experience is it really depends on your paying quotient. You can build almost as fast as you want if you're going to be uncomfortable, which means you could have days when the AC's down, you could have days when the power is intermittent. I'm not suggesting that. That used to happen. Now technology, power doesn't work.
Yeah.
But I literally split a corridor with a temporary wall. We renovated one side of the hall. This is when I was practicing. We renovated one side of the hall. All the classrooms on that side. In one semester, we flipped at Christmas, took the wall, actually the wall stayed. We just flipped the finish and the doors and moved to the other side of the hall. And the construction workers were kept completely separate from the students. There is no way to prevent 100%, so everybody's badged and it's controlled. But there were ways that we dealt with that protocol, so there wasn't that direct interaction with students. But that's another way of doing it. But that's a pain quotient. And there's, dollars associated with doing things sometimes too. It just depends on how quickly you want to do it. The sprinkler system, for instance, I could see a scenario where you did half the building one summer and half the next summer.
Yeah.
Because one thing that's consistent is you got to bring the water in to begin with. So there's that whole piece, which I've tried to account for the number I have, that's in there, so you can bring that in. The same thing on the other buildings. But there's just lots and lots and lots of little things like that when we're backing into it, that's what we're looking at. And I guess I'm trying to explain why we're so different.
Sure.
It's not against anybody looking at it.
So our last, in the last bond, I think we did all projects, competitive sealed proposal. I think they were all CSP. Do you remember? I don't remember. I think they were.
I think that's right.
And that seemed to work really well for us in this area as far as beating that number down on that competitive sealed proposal. But if y'all talked about the procurement or how y'all would think about proceeding?
Yeah, actually, it kind of depends on, we call it, whether you have a project that's really clean or a project that's going to be messy. And unfortunately, renovations are messy. Our experience has been that we can deliver the best bang for the buck for our clients with CMAR on a project that's a renovation project. If it's a clean project that you can bid out and you know it's a very well defined scope, it's easier. But on a CMAR, on any project, there's going to be a contingency. Well, when you tear into that wall, nobody knows whether there's a plumbing pipe behind that wall or not if your plans are reflective of that. So you run into surprises when you start doing renovations. If you've done renovations at your home, you've probably done that yourself. But anyway, our experience has been, it seems to be more of the East Texas contractor community that does schools, and especially larger schools, is traditionally and typically CMAR. Now, it may be a little different in Houston and Dallas, but if you'll compare prices, we can show you projects. We do projects all the time in the East Texas area with East Texas contractors for quite a bit less than what they're being done in Dallas, Houston, Austin. So,
Well, Sam Houston was a
statewide average on cost.
Sam Houston. That renovation was a competitive sealed proposal, and I think that one was done by WRL. Sorry.
Yeah, they're East Texas.
Is that who just did the Hallsville Elementary School?
I don't know. But we had those dollars stretched a long way on that campus.
And this is where, this is a professional difference of opinion. Again, this is their experience. We have our experiences. So again, this is not against anybody, because they're all, and the fact is bid day is the date that matters. Doesn't matter what we do on the bid day, that's the real number that we have to live with.
Right.
We would not recommend CSP. The trade-off is you have to give the architect enough time to do things. You seem at risk. Usually, my experience is, and not just in the K-12, but across the board, I've done heavy industrial and medical, as well as just commercial. When I've dealt with CMAR, in the other markets besides K-12, it's worked very smoothly. I think what Larry's saying is correct. This isn't the Houston market, and I'm not trying to compare that, but there is this concept of CMAR, how it's done, and everything else. So other than a very high-level conversation this afternoon on the phone while we're both driving, we haven't really compared notes. So while I'm open, the fact is we're going to do whatever we ask. If you want to see the risk, we'll execute see the risk. It doesn't matter. But as it stands right now, we would recommend seeing the risk. And the primary one that we've seen with it is that the approach to it. So our contract with CMAT Risk, the one that we would recommend you use, which is what we did and everything else we do, we certainly could use another contract. I'm just saying, this is what we've done in the past. But our contract says they don't get a contingency. There is no construction contingency. Because I've done that, and that becomes their fund. And then what happens, in my experience, and again, this is my personal experience with projects, not against anybody else, is that when I'm the one watching, I end up having to fight to keep that money from being used for stuff that should have been caught when the GMP came in. But in fairness, a lot of the reason that happens is because the clients are so rushed. The architects are not given sufficient time to put the detail, first to do the field work that's required to verify whether the pipe's in the wall, but also to do the drawings. So if you have to pay a reasonable fee. That's the first thing. And the second thing is you have to allow them sufficient time to do the work. And to do the drawings, in my opinion, on this project, if you want to start to finish to go out to bid, you probably need at least 8, maybe 10 months before you bid. Now, that's up for debate because you may feel it takes even longer than that. That's okay. It certainly would be more than a year because we're doing a lot faster than that. But certainly 8 to 10 months, and you can do it, and it might be done quicker than that. But that whole scheduling piece, y'all have to decide kind of that other thing too. I also have a belief that the farther out you are bidding, the better the numbers are going to be, because things are flattening. I have talked to a couple of contractors that worked on the last projects because I just want to get a feel for what's been going on up here, because I haven't been up here recently, and they were both consistent and said that they are seeing a flattening. Nobody's cutting the money, really, but they're not seeing the radical increases. But you're having the same problems with equipment deliveries and purchases. The difference is that what I was told by one of them is that they're no longer being held hostage by, I'm only going to hold my number for 9 days. Give me a PO, or now it's going to be another $100,000.
Yeah.
Or what just happened to me on my program down there was we had a generator that was ordered last February, and in November they said, well, they started saying it'd be here in September, then it'll be November, and then they finally came back and said in December that, well, if you want to pay another $100,000, we'll get it to you, but it's just not available. They sold it out from under us, is what they did. The other thing you can do that can help is you can do early procurement, which we have made that decision where I'm at right now in Tomball because the volume of work that's happening. We're pre-purchasing all the mechanical, electrical equipment, the heavy electrical equipment anyway, all the chillers, all the rooftop units, all that equipment. We give the architect as a design to the spec. We take it and we purchase it through the buy board. We get the benefit of the buy board and the benefit of not having the markup from the contractor, which would be 15% by the time it goes through 2 or 3 hands. It would be more than that. So there's a significant cost savings there. If you have $5, $6, $7 million of equipment you're going to have to buy. I'm not saying you've got that much here, but you can see the point. It just depends on what you have and what you need to do.
All right, I got one more question. Mr. Grubbs, on the finance part of it, do you see, if we were to potentially call a bond in a month, do you see anything changing on your end?
No.
Not as far as using the same numbers, taxable value, that sort of?
I mean, we're going to continue to monitor that so that when you do call, because what we've seen is that 450 is a conservative interest rate assumption.
Yeah.
Right? What we've seen is the trend in interest rates actually have been coming down. So if it gets to the point where it's too conservative, we can shave that down and we can clean that up in February. Ultimately, though, we're going to have to hang our hat on what INS tax rate increase, if any, is going to be communicated to the voters. And we're all going to feel comfortable that when it's time to sell all the bonds, whatever the amount ends up being, that we're at or below what we communicate during the voting period of time.
Now, how far out is that before we can say we're not asking for any more taxes or we need 1 penny?
When you move forward to call for the election, we'll have all that tied up at that point. You don't need to communicate anything leading up to that. And then, but once you call for the election and the amount that you decide to move forward with, we'll have a tax impact that will be able to be shared. We'll be working with the district in preparing a lot of the voter information material, just like we did with the last election, that all of the voters in the community will be able to know, here's our project, here's our tax impact, here's how you get registered to vote and when, here's where you vote and when. All of that type of information will go out. For May elections, we typically see the planning and preparation of those documents up until spring break, and then when we come back from our spring breaks, that's when we really see that information distributed. But you'll be able to communicate the day you call for the election what tax impact, if any, you're proposing.
And that has to be done before February 17th.
Hey, Brian, and I know you have a fancy name for this, but we're not a district that goes like this on our taxable value. We're a district that goes like this.
You are a we talked about that in the committee. You're a fluctuating tax-based district.
There you go.
You've had, this past year, you had a very large, significant increase. But you've also had periods of time where you've had a decrease. So just also keep in mind, it was a much larger bond election last time, where we sold all those bonds over a 3-summer period. It's not to say that you have to sell all of the bonds in the summer of 2023 either, because you're have a May election. By the time the election rolls around, the appraisal ballpark.
If you were gonna guess?
Less than half of a point. I mean, I think on the $30 million transaction that we did, it was $80,000 was the total price of bond insurance on a $30 million transaction. So we're talking a fraction. Now, my opinion, I think the IRS will change the calculation. So by the time we're selling bonds in May, June, July, we're going to have the capacity to get the PSF. The PSF fee is $1,500. So it's a non-event, and it's factored into the interest rate that we're assuming that goes into the projections that was shared by the committee member. So.
Okay. Any other questions? Anybody have anything else for tonight? Thank all of y'all for coming. Thank the committee again. We appreciate it. It's a lot of very good information that we will be investing in meeting on.
Yeah.
You got something else, Robert?
I get a little bit out of my lane, just because I just went through this, the new law required that statement. This is a tax increase. The way that we dealt with that was, they had well, first off, they did a huge campaign about it, published the law. We're doing this because the law, the state is now passed a statute that we have to do it, whether it is or it isn't. And basically it's an education process, so when everybody was looking at that, yeah, maybe you've got a tax increase, but there's not that, oh, I'm not voting for it, it's just a tax increase. Now, some people it don't. It's
not gonna matter.
It won't matter.
Right.
But it's that packaging of how you package that presentation to get your bond passed.
That might be a good.
We've been discussing that a lot.
We've shared a lot of sample voter information material with your administration.
We have a lot.
So they can see how other districts have characterized that very legal statute. It's in every bond election, it's on every ballot, and how other districts are communicating that very thing. Because unfortunately, it's the rules that we were dealt with that did not apply when you did your last bond election.
Okay, well, good. Well, thanks again. We are now going to adjourn into closed session. Pursuant to Texas Government Code, Chapter 551071 and 551074.
Thank y'all for coming.
Laser cutter.
All right, we're back in open session. Do we need to consider and approve the personnel matters as recommended? Do we have a motion?
Second.
Second.
Mr. Huffine. Motion by Mr. Huffine, second by Ms. Marshall. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? The motion carries. If no further business, we are adjourned.